Good evening, everybody. It is the Safety and the Sportswriter with Knoxville Nate and Big Joe on a Thursday night, 5:45 in the afternoon through the last Thursday in March as we get ready to celebrate our Easter weekends and the Sweet 16 of the men's basketball tournament. Started a baseball season. Football never goes away. Basketball is going on. Hockey's going on. I was watching a little hot college hockey this afternoon. A lot of stuff going on. How you doing, Nate?
I'm doing pretty good, bud. I'm excited about the Sweet 16. I'm excited about spring practice going on right now. I'm keeping a pretty close eye, as you can imagine, on what's happening up there in Columbus. As last year we had no quarterbacks, and this year we have 5. So it's gonna be pretty cool to go up there for the. I'm gonna attend a couple of practices and go to the spring game and kind of try and figure out who's going to be the quarterback, because we got some options at this point.
Before we get into our usual stuff, I wanted to talk to you because I know you're an Ohio guy as well as a Tennessee guy, and over the past couple of weeks, they're really the biggest star and the most well-paid star in baseball. Now seems to be in the middle of a gambling controversy, was something that took Pete Rose out of the Hall of Fame. The stories are confusing to say the least.
Yeah.
I've always been a big. I don't like the fact that the man. First of all, I find it ironic that he had to speak through an interpreter to talk about how his interpreter stole from him. I mean, I don't want to get into any kind of political garbage going back and forth or whatever, but I feel if you come to this country to work and you've been here 4 years, you should be able, especially maybe because I'm a sports writer at heart, that you should be able to speak the language and at least give an interview.
Yeah. And hasn't he been here longer than that? I thought he was on. I thought he'd been on the Angels. I thought this was now his 7th season.
Yeah, it could be. It is. It's just
2008 was the first year that he played for the Angels, and he played 104 games. And now 2024 is his 7th season. So I get it. It's I couldn't begin to imagine what it would be like if I suddenly uprooted my practice here and went to Japan and tried to learn the language and learn the culture. But I would imagine after 7 years that I would have some idea of what these reporters who I am speaking to every day are saying. And I damn assure you that if I had someone who was translating what I was saying, that I would trust that person. And my big thing is I don't understand any of this in the sense that if this guy's gambling, first off, the minute that you learn that, wouldn't you cut ties with this idiot and go your separate ways? I mean, I don't care how good of a friend he is. I don't care what's going on. You're a $700 million man plus what you've made before. I mean, this guy's a $1 billion athlete, and anything that has to do with sports betting going on with someone close to you has to be cut off.
Right.
And moved away from you immediately. So that, why he would start paying. I mean, it's one thing if the guy owes somebody $20, okay? Right. You give the guy $20. Hell, the guy, I lost $5,000 and this guy's, bothering me about it. Okay, $5,000. We're not talking about $5,000, Joe. We're talking about millions of dollars and hundreds of thousands of dollars for a guy who's supposed to be, the centerpiece of now 2 different franchises. So that's what I really have a problem with. If there's any questionable practices going on with this guy, you should have cut ties with him a long time ago. And why are you on the hook for $1 million in gambling debts if you had nothing to do with it? I mean, shouldn't this guy have to pay that himself? I mean, I'm sure he makes good money translating everything that is said back and forth. Make him pay for it. Take it out of his pay. I don't know. Make him get a loan. Why you're even involving yourself? I mean, look at all these NFL players, Joe, who have had to forfeit years worth of their contracts. Best example is Calvin Ridley. He missed an entire year of football This is a guy who makes $10+ million a year. He missed his entire year of being paid because he bet on a couple of sports games. So I think this has to be looked at a little bit deeper than what we've heard about so far.
Yeah, and as you said, I mean, it's one thing when you hear about Phil Mickelson putting down 15 million or losing 30 million over a course of a year or 10 years, but that's his money.
Yeah.
This guy, $5 million. It takes a lot of bets to lose $5 million. And
Yeah.
and it's like you didn't suspect. I don't know. Like I said, I would feel a lot better if I could hear it from his mouth and know exactly what he's saying. A, and B, when you bring it around, we talk about this all the time. We talk about it in terms of the NIL. We talk about it in terms of the transfer portal. We talk. This is why I think the commissioners had shied away from the betting and being involved with the gambling for years, because it opens the door. And where do you stop it? I mean, how do you tell a basketball player he can't bet on football? How do you tell a football player he can't bet on basketball? How do you pay? Once the ball's rolling, once they're in the door, it's all over the place. And you already have one of. Hey, look, I don't like Pete Rose as a person, but I've grown up. Pete Rose was the face of baseball, and Pete Rose was as good an ambassador for the game until crap hit the fan. And he's now, not even let into the Hall of Fame without a ticket. So, but now you got this guy. If you don't investigate him fully, first of all, it's not fair to Pete, A, and B, if he is partially guilty or something, and you're going to let him get off with a suspension, or you got to let Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame.
Well, me, I'm a Yankees and a Mets and a Reds fan. I kind of have three teams, but the Reds are really my favorite team of all. I've always been a Reds fan first and foremost since I was a little kid, and I always loved Pete Rose just because Charlie Hustle, man. I mean, he was the real deal. I was at the game when he broke Ty Cobb's record. I was 5 years old, and it was just the coolest thing I've ever seen. When they brought, it was a Corvette they brought out on the field and gave it to him, and he rode around in Riverfront Stadium in the convertible, and it was just the coolest thing I'd ever seen, and I just loved the guy. But he was kind of his own worst enemy.
Yeah,
I mean, he had several. It wasn't like he gambled once and got thrown out.
No.
I mean, he was gambling when he was playing. He was, gambling when he was managing, and then he was lying about it. And then he started, they started doing more investigation and found out he was gambling on games that he was managing himself. And then he said, I only bet on us to win. And it's like, how do you believe this guy after he lies over and over again? And it's not like he was just, I have to believe that, he probably may have, done something shady in a game or two while he was playing or while he was managing, because he was owing guys large amounts of money. And that concerned me a lot. So, and he had a problem with gambling, and it's weird, unless you're really somebody who struggles with that. It's kind of like someone who's addicted to drugs. Like, why does that guy keep taking drugs? Well, unless you're involved and unless you've had experience with that, it's kind of hard to judge somebody. But Pete had chances, and he just kept going the wrong way. So it's hard for me to really feel bad for him when he dug his own grave. He lied, he cheated, he stole, he gambled, he had a lot of bad moves. But I will agree with you that this needs to be investigated to the utmost extent, because if he's betting on games that he's played in or betting on games that he's involved with, that needs to come out, because it's not fair to Pete, maybe, but it's certainly not fair to any of these NFL guys who've been, suspended for a year, suspended for 6 to 8 games, and costing them millions of dollars for placing bets, inside the facility. Sometimes they're not even, betting on games that they're involved with or betting on the NFL. They're just not allowed to bet at all, inside their facility. And there's a lot of weird rules that are being enforced pretty heavily. So it's a real fine line that we're tiptoeing on here. having a team in Las Vegas, allowing sports betting, being matched up with the with the franchises and with the league now. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. But I think you have to, for transparency's sake, you have to get to the root of this story, and there needs to be an explanation. I don't give a shit who says it, whether it's Otani or whether it's the investigators, but somebody needs to figure out what exactly is going on and quit feeding us bullshit, because I feel like that's what we're getting right now.
Well, yeah, it's like I said, it's the tip of the iceberg. Who knows what else is beyond it and what they're going to discover. That's probably the worst thing they're really worried about, is when they see how much of this is going on. I mean, he's the biggest star, but there's other guys probably involved in it too. So we will see what happens. Let's get to more happy sports. We are in the best basketball time of the year. Last week, as usual, we had our upsets, but by the end of the weekend, it seemed to come back into form, a little bit at least. First of all, let's look at the biggest upset of the week, which was Yale over Auburn. I never saw that coming, and I watched a lot of Yale this year.
What are you talking about? You're the one that was saying that the Ivy League was up and that they should get more than one team. Don't start saying you had no idea. You came out and said that you thought they should have more than one team, and that it was a strong league this year.
I agree with you, but I never saw them beating Auburn. I mean, it's like that's matching up with a 8 or 9 seed. Yeah, maybe, but not Auburn. I mean, maybe I understood the Duquesne over BYU a lot easier than I did Yale coming up strong. But I'm proud of Yale. I'm totally proud of Yale. I mean, I wanted them to get through. I would have loved to seen it be Yale against UConn tipping off in about an hour and a half from now. But,
I guess the biggest thing to me that was shocking was, how well Auburn has been playing as of late. The SEC men's basketball tournament, was won by Auburn, and not one, pulling the game out by 1 point. I mean, they beat the crap out of Florida. I think they won by 19 or 20 points in the final game. So that to me was kind of the surprising factor. They were a 4 seed, so they got the double bye. But in their first game, they had to play South Carolina. They beat South Carolina by 30 points. I think they won by 31. And then they played a pretty solid Mississippi State team, and who had just knocked off Tennessee, and beat them pretty soundly. And then in the finals, they played a Florida team that was pretty hot and had won 3 games in a row, and beat them by 20 points. So, to me, it was shocking just because of how well Auburn had been playing as of late during tournament time, and also because of who Auburn's coach is and how well he prepares his team for games and how well he coaches in game. That, to me, is why I give the Yale Bulldogs so much credit for that victory.
Yeah. And then, they came back to earth against San Diego State. Not shocking, really, because San Diego State's a pretty good team. But San Diego State now has UConn coming up. And I've said this to my friends. Overall, this might be, this might be the best UConn team as far as depth and trading players for players. They've always had players like they had Okafor and Gordon, when they had Allen. They've always had a lot of great players, but they had 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. This team is interchangeable parts, and I've never seen it work like this for UConn before, and that's what's scary about them. San Diego State, how do you think they can match up with what seemingly is a unstoppable force right now?
It's hard for me to believe that San Diego State's going to be able to keep up with them, mainly because San Diego State leans so heavily on Ledee. I almost said Ledee on leans. They lean so heavily on Ledee. He averages 22 points a game and 9 rebounds. I mean, this guy is the focal point for everything that the Aztecs do. And then they've got a bunch of guys who are kind of, role players. They've got like 3 guys that average 9 points, a couple guys that average 8, one that averages like 7.9 and 6.3 and 5. They just have other guys that kind of contribute, but he's definitely the main cog in their offense. So that to me will be interesting to see, how they can survive if UConn's able to shut him down, which I think they will.
Yeah.
So that's going to be tough for them to kind of hang on. And San Diego State didn't even really dominate the Mountain West this year. I mean, Utah State was the team that won the conference and was 28-7, and we saw them play in the tournament. And then Nevada, Boise State, UNLV all had better records than San Diego State in the conference. So this isn't even one of the best San Diego State teams that we've seen, in the last couple of years. And it's interesting to me that they've made it this far because I didn't really expect it, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, the Mountain West got a lot of good reviews all year long about how deep they were and everything else. And that's one of those conferences where maybe they could have squeezed a couple of Big East teams in instead of them. I don't know, but we'll see. We'll see what they do tonight against San Diego or against UConn. On the bottom half of that, we got Illinois, Iowa State, which should be a pretty good game. We're talking about 2 very good games. 2 minutes on at 10 o'clock. A little late, but I'll try and stay up for it. Illinois, you talked about coming into this tournament as one of your dark horses that could be a bracket buster, and it would be a nice setup to see a UConn-Illinois game. What do you think about Iowa State matching up with Illinois tonight?
Man, I've got to be honest. I kind of thought Iowa State was overrated coming into this. I was kind of shocked that they were a 2 seed. I understand they won, their tournament. I get all of that. They were playing pretty good at the end of the season. But I just didn't expect them to be a team that, was as steady as they are. I mean, they took it to South Dakota State in the first round, and then in the second round, they pretty much handled, a decent Washington State team and beat them 67-56. So, I have to give them credit where it's due. They've played good basketball up to this point. I have to say that if I had to pick between these 2 teams, I really don't know who I'd go with right now because Illinois is playing good and Iowa State is playing good. I mean, this should be a heck of a basketball game between these 2 teams, and I think either one of them can give UConn a pretty tough time. I expect UConn to beat San Diego State. Anything can happen in one game, obviously, on any given night in the game of basketball. But just doing prognosticating, I expect UConn to win unless they're just, completely off shooting wise. But I would expect them to have a hard time with either one of these teams, as Illinois has been solid pretty much all year. The only game that I saw them really get blown out in was the game right here in Knoxville where Tennessee beat the crap out of them. But other than that, they've been a strong team in the Big Ten all season. They were a 3 seed for a reason, and they've blown out both of their opponents. They beat Morehead State 85-69, and then they blew out Duquesne 89-63. So they're scoring, well over 80 points a game pretty consistently. And I think this Illinois-Iowa State matchup is going to be one of the better games that we see. And, most people are picking Iowa State, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if, Illinois won. I love Shannon, the guard for Illinois. He's one of the best players in the country, 23 points a game. He shoots 50% from field goal, and also he's 81.5 from the line. So you and me both know this is a game about guards.
Yep.
And he's one of the best guards in this whole tournament.
All right, then we go to the bottom half of the night. You got Arizona against Clemson, number 2 against number 6, and then North Carolina, number 1 against number 4, Alabama. The funny thing is, and I agreed with you when you said it, we all talked about the ACC not having the greatest year so far that they are being up to their usual snuff, but they got 4 teams through. It's really weird how it worked out. I still I think we were right on Virginia, but it looks like we were a little bit off on those guys. But you never can tell. What do you think about first of all Clemson against Arizona? I don't see Clemson getting past Arizona. Do you?
I don't. Most people are picking Arizona. They've got about an 80% rate as far as people jumping on board with the Wildcats. But I was wrong, man. I mean, I did think that the ACC was good up top. But I thought they're a very top heavy conference, and I figured Duke and UNC would probably do pretty well. But I didn't expect them to have 4 teams in the tournament. In the Sweet 16 of the tournament. That to me was very surprising and also kind of good thing to see. NC State won the ACC tournament and still going. Duke, is a good team. They're still playing. North Carolina got, I saw a statistic the other day where North Carolina's starting 5 is right around the same exact age as the starting 5 for the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're those guys have been, a lot of them have been in college basketball 5-6 years. So I expected them to play well, but some of these other teams in the ACC have really surprised me. So, I think Clemson is a good team. I really do like their big guy, Hall. He's a dude that can score. He can defend. He can make shots. He's not a 3-point shooter, but 19 feet in, he's a good scorer, and they're a well-coached team. But I think Arizona's got a little bit too much talent for them to play with. But as we say, any given night, I think most people have Arizona right around 6.5 point favorite, and that's about where I would put it. To be honest, that's why Vegas makes money. They know what the hell they're talking about.
And let's see, we got Alabama and North Carolina in the earlier game or the later game, whatever it is. I don't know. But, North Carolina took care of Michigan State. I call that a quality tournament win. Alabama, what do we know about Charleston? What do we know about Grand Canyon from what we saw against Alabama? And are they ready to take on the Tar Heels?
Yeah, I mean, Alabama's been banging all year in the SEC. So, the first 2 opponents they played were not, maybe the most quality opponents, in the whole tournament, I guess. I mean, they got a good draw. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
But this is a team that's 23-11. They were 13-5 in the SEC. And, they played a solid schedule all year long. So they played Purdue this year. They played Creighton. They played Arizona. They lost 3 games in a row. But I think they learned something from those games. So I don't expect them to, I don't expect them to be nervous or, be scared about playing the Tar Heels. In fact, I expect them to come out and go toe-to-toe with them. I mean, Mark Sears is a guy that has played basketball for a long time. He's a senior. He's a dude that doesn't get nervous playing against anybody, doesn't back down. He's not the biggest guy in the world. He's probably about 6 foot with shoes on, but this is a guy that can fill it up. And if he gets going, look out, because he shoots 50% from the floor, and he's a guy that'll put up some threes if he's open. So I expect Alabama to take care of business, and I wouldn't be shocked at all if Alabama wins this game. I mean, they've got 5 guys that average double figures, and shutting down Sears, that doesn't mean you're going to win the game.
All right, let's go over to tomorrow night. You're an old-time Duke fan. They're going against Houston, number 1 in that section. Duke, a nice victory over James Madison, nice victory over Vermont. Haven't been really tested yet. I don't know, but they did what they had to do. Houston, same thing. They took care of Longwood. Texas A&M was a little bit of a test for them. But what do you think about Houston Duke?
Yeah, I'm nervous. I'm really nervous because we were just talking about another team over there that got a good draw in Alabama and Duke also. I mean, I'll be honest, they've got a really good draw too, and Duke looks really good when they're hitting shots, but they rely on Jared McCain. I mean, let's just be honest. Jared McCain is a freshman, and he's the best player on this team. I don't care what anybody says. I mean, Kyle Filipowski is good. He's a guy that can, do a lot of things for you. But the last 25 games of the year, Jared McCain has been the best player on this team. So if he's hot and he gets going, Duke can win. But, if McCain gets shut down or has a bad shooting night, they can easily lose this game. The guy who, to me, I don't know why, but it seems like to me this Duke team rises and falls with Mark Mitchell. When Mark Mitchell scores 10, 12, 14 points, Duke seems to win. When he has a bad game or can't put the ball in the basket, it seems like Duke loses. So it seems weird because he's not like the best player on the team, but he's a guy that kind of dictates how this team goes. I think this is going to be a tough test for the Blue Devils. If I had to choose, I would probably pick Houston in this one just because I feel a little bit more comfortable with them. They've had a better season overall, but Duke's no slaps. They're 26-8, and they got a lot of talent. But this Houston team is just a little more seasoned, if you know what I mean.
And then on the bottom half, we got Marquette against North Carolina State, the Raging Wolfpack. I got to say, I watched the 30 for 30 on ESPN about the Survive and Advance Jim Valvano run the other day. And I'm sure the people down in Raleigh are sitting there thinking, well, we had to win the tournament to get in that year, the ACC tournament to get in that year. Maybe this is lightning in a bottle again, but I like the fact for Marquette they got Kolick back, I can never say his name right. I think it's Kolick. Their point guard. They play differently when he's there. He's a stabling force with them. I like Shaka Smart, of course, in coaching in the NCAA tournament. I do see Marquette getting through this. What do you think?
I'm not gonna second guess this NC State team, man. They are. They won the ACC tournament and they earned every minute of it. And let's be honest, they played a pretty decent Texas Tech team that was ranked, a 6 seed in the first round as NC State came in at 11 and they beat the tar out of them. And then, they played an Oakland team that took down Kentucky. And, Oakland wasn't wanting to just win one game. They wanted to prove that they're that team that could, make a run and not be a Cinderella, but be a team that could be a factor in this tournament. And they played pretty solid against NC State, but NC State was still able to win. And, the guy that makes everything work for the Wolfpack is the big boy, DJ Burns. He's a kid that I know a lot about. He's from right down the road in North Carolina. And, he played here at Tennessee for a year. And, man, he's just an unbelievable player, and he's really hard to deal with because he's so big, and he's a facilitator. You look at him and be like, oh, this is a guy who plays down in the block and, probably just plays with his back to the basket and posts people up. But he's a facilitator. He plays up on the, in the free throw line and from block to block on the top end of the paint and, leads the team pretty much in assists, except for Mitch O'Connell. So I think this will be a pretty good game, and I would not be surprised at all if NC State won.
Now let's get into the bottom half. We got Purdue against Gonzaga. Gonzaga this year, I have kind of a feeling this is a Gonzaga type year that they could take out Purdue. I think they had a less than stellar season. They had a solid season. They chased St. Mary's all year long. But I think Gonzaga and Mark Few seem to be better playing with house money, playing from behind, or playing when no one's noticing them than when they're favorites. And this year, no one talked about them coming into the tournament. So, I mean, they look good their first two games. I'm not a big believer and painter, the coach of Purdue. I think he's a great recruiter. I think when the lights go on, it's kind of like, well, if my team's better, we'll win. If not, I don't do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And it depends so much on Eddie. And, Eddie's as good a college center as we've seen in a long time. But I find, and you and I, you say it all the time, guard play in the tournament. And, centers seem to be the easiest thing to take out of the game.
Yeah. No, they are. I mean, you could double them. If you've got some bigger guys that can push them around, you're in good shape. And I like Graham Ike, the big guy from Gonzaga. He averages 16 and a half points and 7 rebounds. He's a good player. And yeah, there's no Drew Timme or Morrison or Dan Dickauer, whoever you want to,
Right.
throw out there for Gonzaga this year. But they've got their deepest team probably that I've ever seen. I mean, they've got 6 guys that average 6 or 7 guys that average right around double figures, and that's a good thing when you get into tournament play, Joe. Because if one guy's off, you can lean on anybody, and whoever's open can take the shots. And I agree with you. I think nobody's really expecting Gonzaga to win, and I think that helps them. And let's be honest, Mark Few is one of the best basketball coaches in all the country, and has been for 20 years. And no one has mentioned this really, but this is their 9th straight Sweet 16.
Wow.
And no other team has done that in all of college basketball except for the Gonzaga Bulldogs. So I wouldn't be shocked at all if they knock them off, and I hope they do.
Me too. And now one real close to your heart. You got Tennessee against Creighton. Creighton, I'll tell you, Creighton, when I watched them in the Big East this year, they did a lot of good things. They depend on 3 players. They're a good team at what they do. Very 3-centric, shall I say? Although they have the big boy in the middle who can make a big difference too. But Creighton, I just have that feel about. I don't have a good feeling about them. I think Tennessee can get through them, unless Creighton goes on one of those 9 for 12 3-point halves.
Yeah, I mean, anything can happen in one basketball game, but what the Tennessee Volunteers have going for them is they've got a veteran coach who's won 800 games in college basketball. B, they've got one of the best, if not the best player in all of college basketball in Dalton Connect. And then 3, they play defense.
Right.
Okay. They want to play defense. They like playing defense. And even when they are not shooting well, they play defense and can win games. They can win low scoring games. They can win high scoring games. And, the second round game against Texas was probably one of the worst shooting games of the year for Tennessee, but they just never relinquished the lead. Even when Texas went on runs and made shots, they were able to get stops when they needed to. And that's why I feel pretty good about the Vols in this one. I think Creighton hadn't played a team with this kind of tenacity on defense, for 40 minutes. And I don't think they've played against Dalton Connect all year, because there isn't one besides him. So I feel more confident about. I got 2 teams in this thing, so I feel pretty good. One of my teams is going to win, but if I had to bet, I would pick Tennessee over my Dukies, with just based on the matchup.
I'm looking. I want to see. Mark. I'm rooting for Marquette and UConn to make it through, and I'd love to see Gonzaga. But I wouldn't mind seeing Tennessee there if Gonzaga can't make it. Let's talk about a couple of blue bloods that were very disappointing. First of all, Kansas. I mean, it's kind of predictable. Everybody said this wasn't your regular Kansas team. They got steamrolled by Cincinnati in their own tournament and ranked way higher than they should have been. They should not have been a 4th seed. Were they 4th or 3rd?
Kansas,
Yeah.
I believe they were a 4. Yes.
Yeah. They didn't deserve the 4th seed. They were more of a middle of the pack. They were an 8 and 9 probably, which probably would have served them better, maybe in a way, because they wouldn't have had a target on their back. And then now we got Calipari. He's 1-5 in the last his last 6 NCAA tournament games.
Yeah, he's 1-4 in the last 5 games. So, wow.
I
That's
mean,
not good.
here's a guy that gets all the talent he wants in the world. I mean, I understand SEC's getting better. He's going against guys like Barnes, coach like Rick Barnes. He's getting Alabama's been good. Auburn's been good. There's a lot more. He's only when he first got there, all he had to worry about pretty much with Florida. It seemed. Now he's got a lot of teams he has to worry about. But how much longer do you think Kentucky's going to have the patience with him if he can't win SEC titles anymore, and then he's out one and done in the? I mean, it's kind of like, not that he's the same person, but this reminds me of the last years of Bobby Knight in Indiana. Like, yeah, you make the tournament, but you don't win anything.
Yeah, I mean, he's gonna survive another year here, but I've got a strong suspicion that if they have another postseason next year like they had this year, I think they're gonna push for him to retire because they haven't won anything, Joe. I mean, this
Right.
is a team that like you said they're stacked with talent. I mean, we didn't even see some of the talent because DJ Wagner really didn't play in this tournament, and even without him, they've got 7 or 8 NBA players on this
Right.
team, easy. And the fact that they can't win the SEC regular season, they can't win the SEC tournament, and then they keep getting knocked out in the first round of the NCAA tournament. That's a bad look.
Yeah.
And I feel like that they're not going to just keep letting this slide uh, with the amount of pressure that's on them from their fans, from their from everybody. I mean, DJ Wagner, who was one of the top 3 players in the country, he played 17 minutes in this game versus Oakland. He was 0 of 5 from field goals. 0 for 0 from the free throw line. He had 0 points. What the hell is that? And then you got Reeves, who had 27. You got Edwards and Mitchell, who both had double figures. You got Dillingham, who's the best player in the country off the bench and is projected to be a top 5 pick in the draft. You got Bradshaw, who's one of the top freshmen in the country. I just can't keep defending him because he's doing less. As I told you, he's doing less with more than anybody in the country. I mean, he really is. And he can recruit. But what the hell does that matter if you have the best players and you still can't win? It doesn't mean anything.
Especially when you can't bully anybody around. I mean, nobody's afraid of him anymore. Nobody's afraid of Kentucky, and that's sometimes it's good to make a change and just and even though he wins, even though he brings attention, even though he brings the athlete, you're gonna get the athletes to Kentucky anyways. It doesn't matter. Bring a better coach or bring another coach in. Overall, what are your feelings on this tournament before we talk to a little spring football?
Yeah, I mean, it's been very interesting so far. I like this group of teams we have in the Sweet 16, and obviously I love it because both of my teams are still playing, which is the most important thing to me. But there's a lot of teams that are left that can win this whole thing. I feel like Arizona can win it all. UConn can win it all. I think Houston or Duke can win it all. NC State has proven they can hang with anybody. Marquette, Purdue, Gonzaga, Creighton, Tennessee. I mean, I just think at this point it's anybody's ball game, and it's just going to come down to who matches up with who the best.
Yeah. Who, if you had to pick 2 teams for the final, who would you pick at this point?
Right now, I feel like UConn. That's who I picked to win the whole thing again. So I feel like they've got a pretty good road to hoe, and I'm picking UConn. And then from the other side, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm picking Tennessee.
All right, there you go. I would. I could see that. I could see that. I'm thinking.
If not now, when? I mean, it's the best team they've had.
Well,
they've got talented freshmen. They've got talented seniors. They've got a seasoned coach. They've got depth. They've got big guys. They've got small guys. This is the best team they've ever had.
and if you're a college basketball fan, you gotta love Rick Barnes. You gotta want him to have that one shining night moment on Monday night where he's one of the last two teams there, and let him show what he's got. Let him have his shot at the national title. Every great coach deserves at least one time at that, and he's certainly a great coach. Let's get to the spring football. You wanted to talk about Ohio State. What do we got going on up that way?
Yeah, man, there's a battle up there for quarterback right now. You've got Devin Brown, who was the backup to Kyle McCord last year. He got to play a little bit. Wasn't impressed with him, to be honest with you. He was a big time recruit out of the state of Utah, but I just didn't see anything that I really liked, and so I was very concerned about him coming back as the incumbent when McCord left. But Ryan Day, to his credit, went out and brought in a whole ton of talent. Aaron Nolan was the number 5 rated quarterback coming in the 24 class. He signed him. He got Will Howard, a guy who won the Big 12 2 years ago as the starter at Kansas State, 5th-year guy, has a lot of experience and has some talent as well. And then he got Julian Sayin, the number 3 rated quarterback in the 2024 class, who had signed with Alabama. When Nick Saban left, he transferred to Ohio State, and now you've got him as well. So it's going to be very interesting who can run Chip Kelly's offense the best. I have no inkling at all to think that they're just going to throw Will Howard out there because he's the elder statesman. I mean, Ryan Day needs to win right now. Nobody wants to see 10 wins or 11 wins anymore. I'm done defending the guy. He can win 11 games. He can, go 11-1. But people want to see a title, and people want to see him win the Big Ten. And he's going to put whoever's the best out there. And so I expect Julian Sayin to be the quarterback by week 4. Will he start the first game of the first game of the season? Maybe not. But I expect him to be the quarterback by week 4 when they play Oregon.
How much of a difference do you think Riley Leonard's going to make in Notre Dame over the Sam Hartman experiment?
Not much. I think those two guys remind me a lot of each other. Sam Hartman actually had a more prolific career stats-wise in the ACC than Riley Leonard did. Riley Leonard was kind of a hard-nosed winner kind of guy, and Hartman was more of a flair, throw the ball around kind of guy. But, it didn't really work at Notre Dame. For Sam Hartman, and will it work for Leonard? Maybe. He's got more around him. I think he has more talent. He's got better wide receivers than what Hartman had. But do I think he's a difference maker that can win a national championship? I don't.
Now, I mean, I didn't see the kid till the bowl game. That's Steve Angeli. Not really impressed with his physical skills. I thought, he had a great bowl game. A little bit of a plotter. I always say when I look at a quarterback, I look at their feet and see what their footwork's like, and he seemed like a little bit of a plotter. But I mean, in a way, I feel sorry for him because he performed in the bowl game when Hartman decided to sit out, leads them to a victory, and they go out and get Riley Leonard. And it's like, well, I love the coach, but why does he always have to take somebody else's? I don't want to say reject, but cast off or graduated player. Why can't he go out and find? I've said this to you since we started this show. Why can't Notre Dame get a quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, they have a good freshman coming in, and at some point you've got to develop somebody. I mean, bringing in a transfer sometimes works, sometimes doesn't, but you still have to develop players, and it's not just at the linemen, or you got to develop guys at every position. And at some point they're going to have to get a freshman, bring him in and develop him if they want to have prolonged success at that position. So we'll see if he can do it, but he's going to have to do it if he wants to have long-term success at that coaching job.
Well, is it that he's not that secure as a head coach where he'd go out and maybe find a hot offensive coordinator or bring on like a Chip Kelly, like, Ryan Day did, somebody with a name that could come in here and really work with his quarterback and get that quarterback room headed in the right direction where, like I said, you're not always waiting for someone to lose their starting job in another town or another college, or what, like you said, you develop your quarterbacks. And I just find it really, really strange that they can't. I mean, Tommy Rees, we saw what he was like when he left Notre Dame. Not a real special coach. To say, I would say, what did you think about Tommy Rees last year after he left Notre Dame?
I thought he did a pretty good job at Alabama. I thought he was able to develop, Jalen Milroe and make him into a solid quarterback who led them to the college football playoff. So, I don't think he was the problem. I mean, he did a pretty good job with your boy, number 12, the quarterback at Notre Dame.
Drew Pine? Or no.
Why am I blanking? The guy who won more games than any quarterback in.
Oh, Ian Book.
Ian Book.
Your boy. That's your boy.
Hey, he did a pretty good job bringing him along. And then, look what he did, down at Alabama with Jalen Milroe. I think he's a pretty good offensive quarterback. And Denbrock, who is the offensive coordinator now at Notre Dame, certainly did a really good job last year with Jaden Daniels. So, I think Freeman wants to do this. He knows that that's the most important position. So he went out and got the guy that kind of developed the Heisman Trophy winner last year in Jaden Daniels. But, Jaden Daniels played a lot of football before last year. I mean, he started for 3 or 4 years at Arizona State, and then he started for 2 years at LSU. So it's hard for me to give all the credit to Denbrock.
Yeah. And I agree. I mean, I got to agree with you there. But I'd like to see some stability in Notre Dame for a year or two and see what they can develop. I like you go back to Ian Book. He was there 3 years. He put together a lot of stuff. Let's see what happens. It's funny, before we tap out, I almost called one of the local radio stations because there's a guy that calls in every Saturday morning when I'm driving around, and he talks about the Giants quarterback situation. And he talks about how Brock Purdy came out of nowhere. And I'm like, I want to call up and tell the guy, he quarterbacked 40. He started 40 NCAA football games. He didn't come out of nowhere.
No.
If you had been paying attention, he was in the Heisman Trophy conversation going into his senior year. He just didn't have a good senior year. He had a good average senior year, but they were expecting much, much more out of him.
Yeah, he was one of the best players in the country as a sophomore when he had tons of talent around him at the running back and wide receiver position. Those guys left. He didn't have much back there, and things didn't look quite as good. But look what he did once he got some talent back around him in San Francisco.
But it's like, up around here, it's like nobody pays attention to college football. You go, well, they got the Niners. They got Brock Purdy out of nowhere. He didn't come out of nowhere.
No, he just fell in the draft
because
his senior season wasn't that good. But he was definitely going to be on a roster, and he was looking pretty good even in preseason, and they knew right away he was better than Trey Lance before the first game began.
All right, so what's the big plans for the weekend?
Easter, buddy. We're going to go see the Easter Bunny and look for some eggs and go to church, eat the brunch, all the good stuff that comes with this weekend that we have every year.
Yeah, I'm going to my niece's house for Easter Sunday, but I'll be watching a lot of basketball in between. So looking forward to that. Nate, have a great Easter. I will see you next week. Enjoy the basketball. Let's go UConn tonight. Let's see what they can get done.
Go Duke. Go Vols.
All right. Talk to you later.
See you, buddy.